The fluorescent lights hummed their lonely song as Marcus Williams pushed his cart down the marble hallway of Meridian Corporation's 42nd floor. 23 years he'd walked these same corridors, invisible to the executives who rushed past him during daylight hours. 23 years of emptying trash bins filled with discarded dreams and shredding papers that held more zeros than he'd seen in a lifetime. But tonight felt different. Tonight, the weight of what he discovered pressed against his chest like a stone. His weathered hands trembled as he approached the mahogany door marked Jonathan Blackwell, Chief Executive Officer. The same door he'd cleaned behind for over 2 decades, watching a young, idealistic businessman transform into something harder, colder. Something that barely resembled the man who once stopped to ask about Marcus's daughter's college applications. The security guard, the one he'd found abandoned in the bathroom wastebasket 3 floors down, felt like fire in his pocket. Someone had been careless, perhaps deliberately so. Marcus had almost thrown it away with the rest of the trash, but something had stopped him. Maybe it was the memory of his late wife's voice, always telling him that God puts opportunities in front of us for a reason. Maybe it was the letter from the bank that morning, stamped with ugly red letters, "Final Notice." Or maybe it was the face of little Emma Rodriguez from the 3rd floor, the accounts payable clerk who'd been crying in the break room yesterday, whispering into her phone about how she couldn't afford her insulin anymore. The hallway stretched before him like a moral crossroads, each step echoing his internal struggle. Marcus wasn't a thief. In 62 years of life, he'd never taken so much as a paperclip that didn't belong to him. His mother had raised him better than that, with calloused hands and a heart full of scripture about doing unto others. But sometimes, doing right meant doing wrong, didn't it? The security card slid through the reader with a soft beep that sounded thunderous in the empty corridor. The lock clicked open. Blackwell's office was a monument to success, of floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city's glittering skyline, leather-bound books that had never been opened, and a desk that cost more than Marcus made in 6 months. But it wasn't the opulence that made Marcus's stomach turn. It was what he knew lay hidden in the bottom drawer of that pristine desk. 3 weeks ago, he'd been cleaning late when Blackwell had burst in, drunk and raging into his phone about the cancer research buyout and keeping those treatments off the market for another decade. Marcus had frozen behind the bookshelf, mop in hand, as words poured out like poison. Let them keep dying. Sick people are our best customers. He tried to forget, tried to tell himself he'd misheard. But then came the news reports about Meridian's latest acquisition, a small biotech company that had been on the verge of releasing an affordable cancer treatment. The company that was now mysteriously shutting down its research division. Marcus's own father had died of the same cancer 23 years ago. Back when he'd first started this job, he'd taken the position for the health insurance, hoping to save enough for better treatment. He'd been too late then. But maybe, just maybe, he wasn't too late now. His fingers found the drawer handle. Inside, beneath folders of meaningless corporate documents, lay a manila envelope marked Project Delay Protocol. The contents made his blood run cold. Email chains, financial projections, and medical reports, all confirming what he'd overheard. Meridian wasn't just buying competitors to eliminate Thema, they were deliberately suppressing treatments to maintain their stranglehold on expensive, long-term therapies. Thousands would die while Meridian's stock prices soared. Marcus photographed every document with his ancient flip phone, the camera clicking like a countdown to his own destruction. He was no fool, he knew what this meant. A man like him, going up against a man like Blackwell, would be crushed like an ant. His pension, his health insurance, his reputation, all of it would vanish. At 62, he'd be unemployable, unhearable, forgotten. But Emma Rodriguez would have her insulin, and maybe thousands of others would have hope. The last document was a handwritten note in Blackwell's distinctive scrawl. Delay FDA submission indefinitely. Patient mortality projections acceptable for quarterly targets. Acceptable. Marcus closed his eyes and saw his father's face in those final days. The way hope had faded from his eyes like light from a dying bulb. He saw Emma's tears. He saw thousands of faces he'd never meet, families he'd never know, all hanging in the balance of this moment. His phone buzzed. A text from his daughter Sarah in California. "Dad, I know money's tight, but could you help with Tommy's medical bills? The treatments are so expensive." His grandson, his beautiful, bright grandson who reminded him so much of his father. Marcus slipped the security card into the envelope with the copies and sealed it. On the front, he wrote in his careful handwriting, "Mr. Blackwell, this file could end you. It could also save them. Choose wisely. A friend who still believes you. Remember who you used to be." The next morning, Blackwell would find the envelope on his desk. By afternoon, the FBI would receive anonymous copies of every document. By evening, news outlets across the country would be leading with the story. But right now, Marcus Williams simply locked the drawer, straightened the office, and pushed his cart toward the elevator. His reflection in the polished metal doors showed a man transformed not by what he'd taken, but by what he'd given. His job, his security, his comfortable invisibility are all sacrificed for strangers who would never know his name. As the elevator descended through the sleeping city, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in 23 years of cleaning up after other people's ambitions. He felt clean. 3 months later, as congressional hearings dominated the news and Blackwell faced federal charges, Marcus sat in a small diner across from Sarah Connolly, an investigative journalist who'd been the first to break the story. She'd tracked him down despite his anonymity, determined to understand the source of the leak that had shaken the pharmaceutical industry to its core. "Why?" she asked, notebook forgotten on the table between them. "Why risk everything for people you'd never meet?" Marcus stirred his coffee slowly, watching the steam rise like prayers. "My daddy used to say that we're all just walking each other home. Sometimes the path gets dark, and somebody needs to carry the light." Outside the diner window, Emma Rodriguez walked past, healthy and smiling, her children skipping beside her. She didn't recognize the elderly man who'd saved her life, but Marcus didn't need her to. Some kindnesses were meant to remain invisible, known only to the giver, and the infinite mathematics of compassion that somehow always balanced the books. The next week, Marcus started volunteering at the community center, teaching literacy to adults who'd been forgotten by a system that moved too fast to notice them. His pension was gone, but his purpose had never been clearer. In losing everything he thought mattered, he'd found the only thing that actually did: the radical, revolutionary power of choosing love over fear, others over self, light over darkness. And somewhere in the city, thousands of people would live to see another sunrise, never knowing that their tomorrow had been purchased by a janitor's midnight courage.